What's going on, everyone? My name's Kyle, and today's video is going to be about shipping terms that your suppliers will use and which terms that you need to know for your Amazon FBA products. So I have this Excel sheet that I've made, basically laying everything out for you. It's kind of a cheat sheet, so if you want to download that, I'll have a link in the description. But basically what we have here is all the different terms that suppliers will use, their shipping terms, related usually to sea shipping, and then there is also air shipping, which is quicker, and I'll go over both and kind of discuss pros and cons. So with all these shipping terms, it's all about where the responsibility falls for each portion of the shipping time, all the way from your supplier's warehouse where they're making the good to the front doorstep of your home or the warehouse that you're sending them to, which I recommend. So you would be sending them to an Amazon warehouse. So the first and most common one that you'll see a lot is EXW. EXW stands for Ex Works, which basically means that it's just the quote for the product themselves and no shipping costs are included. So that's typically used when you're getting a quotation for different products. They'll give you the EXW cost and not the shipping cost. And so that's kind of good to get an idea of how much it's going to cost for just the product itself without shipping. So if you were to do EXW, that would mean that you would be responsible for organizing shipping all the way from where their warehouse is or wherever their manufacturing plant is to where the end destination. So you're responsible for that entire length of the trip. And as you'll see, each following term, the seller is responsible for more of the trip and the buyer is responsible for less. And so the goal, especially if you're a new seller, is you want to have shipping terms that leave less responsibility on you and more on your supplier. Sometimes you can get it to where, as a buyer, you can set up shipping on your own and maybe save some money that way. But it does get complicated. There's a lot more moving parts and a lot more things that could go wrong. And so as a new seller, it just makes sense to rely on the seller to get the goods to you, and then you take it from there. The next common one that people will use, I have all of them here and you can look at it later, but I'll just go over the common ones. The next one is FOB, which stands for freight on board. So basically, that means that the seller bears all costs and risks up until they're loaded onto the vessel or freight ship. So the supplier will bring the goods, drop them off at the ship, and then the ship will take them to the port, usually like Los Angeles. And if you're shipping to the USA, it'll go to Los Angeles, and then you're required to have a freight forwarder or someone that can get your goods off the ship and then send them, via a truck or whatever shipping company to the warehouse that your, Amazon told you to use, or you have your own warehouse, or sending them to yourself. But FOB is basically just the seller puts them on the ship, and then you have a freight forwarder that you have to hire, unless you want to do it yourself. You can go to the port and then get your goods. But usually you pay a freight forwarder to do that. The cons of that is that you're responsible for the different customs fees and stuff like that. So when the packages come through, you have to pay import fees on those goods. So you have to take that into account, as well as paying the freight forwarder and dealing with trying to get a secondary shipping from the port to the end warehouse. So that's freight on board shipping. The last one is DDP, which is delivered duty paid. So that means that they will put it on the ship. So they'll export it from their warehouse to the ship. They'll take care of all the unloading. They will take care of the unloading at the docks in Los Angeles or wherever they're going. They'll take care of the shipping from the docks to the warehouse, and then they'll unload at the warehouse on your behalf. So basically, that's like door to door shipping. You'll hear a lot, but the actual term is delivered duty paid, and that's the common term for sea shipping. Usually, when you are organizing it that way. So if you are going to be doing sea shipping, it's your first time, I would probably do that just because you don't have to worry about setting yourself up with a freight forwarder and paying fees and stuff. It's usually easier on your end to do that. Now, of course, by all means, if you are willing to and set up a freight forwarder, or maybe you have connections in those different ways, then doing freight on board is the next best option, and you might be able to save a little bit of money by doing it that way. But DDP, delivery duty paid, is probably the go-to way, especially if you're a new seller, for doing sea shipping, just because it's less work on your end and you don't have to worry about paying customs fees and all these other things that will pop up. Now, that is all for sea shipping, and then you can also do air shipping, which is what I usually do, which has all of the pros of the DDP, delivery duty paid, which I just talked about, except it's a lot quicker. Now, it's usually more expensive, but it depends on the product that you're selling. So what I would recommend is, if you are having a lightweight product that's relatively small, air shipping usually isn't that expensive. It's more expensive, of course, but it's a lot quicker, and it's worth that little bit extra money, because then you can get the products into your storefront quicker. But if you're not worried about how quick it gets there, then the sea shipping, or if it's a heavy product, then sea shipping would probably be the way to go, because shipping large heavy objects on air freight is going to be much more expensive, exponentially more expensive, the bigger it gets compared to sea shipping. It's a lot it's a more frugal way of doing it. I'll scroll down a little bit. At the bottom, I just have like some generic average times for shipping. So usually when your supplier first finishes the product, they need to bring it to the port that is sending them off. That can take up to a week, not for them to bring it there. I mean, sometimes it'll take a couple of days for them to bring it, but because sometimes the ships, it takes time for them to load everything up, and then it takes time for them to, leave. So maybe they leave every like once a week, let's say. So that can take, assuming that you're on the front end of that loading time, it could take up to a week to even leave Hong Kong or, wherever on the coast where you're shipping from. So that can take up to a week alone just for that, just to load on the boat. And then the time on board the ship is about 2.5 weeks to get from Hong Kong to LA. So then you're in LA and you're at 3.5 weeks at this point, and then you have to go through the customs clearance in Los Angeles, and assuming that you don't get anything flagged in that like entire shipment, because if you do, it'll take a lot longer, and I've heard of people having to deal with weeks and weeks of being stuck in this customs clearance because either someone in there on the cargo on board had some type of issue, because it's probably not them specifically, because they're doing Amazon FBA, but that's at least half a week, but it could be more. But I'm just saying, let's say half a week, and then your destination from there to wherever the warehouse is in the U.S. could take 3 to 10 days, depending on where you're going. If you're going from LA to New York, that could be a little over a week for ground shipping, versus if you're going to LA, maybe like somewhere in LA, let's say, a couple days max. So after all that time, it takes about a month to get your product to Amazon from the supplier. I have 28 to 35 days on average. Now, it could take slightly less, but usually if it's going to be different than that, it would be more, because of things that come up with shipping. Let's say there's bad weather, maybe the shipment got off track or something. There's weird stuff happens with shipping. So I would always plan for it to take longer than they estimate you, but generally it's around a month. So that compared to air shipping time, which I was actually just quoted for one of my new products, and it was 7 to 9 days. And so it was slightly more expensive for air shipping, but I'm willing to pay that extra money for a couple reasons. One is so I can get my product in quickly, and I don't have to worry about the headache of waiting a month. And what if there's a surge of sellers in my niche, and then I'm behind, so you have to worry about that. And on top of that, having that quick time, if I need to reorder, then it's the same exact procedure. My supplier already knows what's going on. They can ship it quickly, and it takes a little over a week, let's say, to get to Amazon, and that is very quick compared to waiting over a month. Because let's say you order 300 units, and you would basically have to reorder the second your Amazon products get into the warehouse, assuming that you're selling about 10 a day, because it's gone in a week. You would actually have to buy, or you'd have to do it even before that, because of the lead time of making the products, assuming that they just don't have them already made. So it just takes so long, especially if you're doing smaller orders. So for your first order, it just makes more sense to, or your first couple orders, to be doing air shipping. Now, of course, down the line, let's say you have a bunch of inventory stocked up, you're not worried about losing inventory, then you can do sea shipping, save the few $100s or however much it is, depending on the product that you have, doing sea shipping. And then you're not worried about how long it's going to take to get to the warehouse, because you have a ton of inventory and you're not worried about running out. Now, I have heard of people kind of doing a hybrid, to where, let's say they are ordering 600 units and they want 300 air shipped and 300 sea shipping. I guess you can do that too. It seems like that would be kind of a headache if you had to organize it, but that's definitely a valid idea to set up, and you can save a little bit of money in that regard. It just means that your shipment is split up in that way, and if you end up, let's say, selling decently well in the beginning, and you run through that inventory, that's just something to be aware of, and that's something you don't want to do, because Amazon will hurt your listing if you're not if you don't have products in and you run out of inventory, essentially. So that's pretty much all the basics. There's probably 6 or 7 more terms on this sheet, and I basically have this color coded. It goes from the most responsibility on the buyer to the least. So DDP and air door-to-door shipping, as you can see, are all pretty much green along the bottom. And then, the EXW, where you pick it up from their warehouse, is all red, because that all falls on the buyer, or you, when you're making the purchase. So hopefully that kind of simplifies things a little bit for you. Definitely go download this and you can read through it. I have some commentary written on the different definitions, what they all mean. And so that'll help you a lot out with your negotiations with suppliers and talking about shipping terms in general, because I know it can be really confusing, especially if you've never been in that world before of, what is going on with all these shipping. I'm used to just going and putting a stamp on my letter and putting it in the mail. So it definitely can get complicated, but I think this illustration, it will be really beneficial. So definitely go download it and check it out, and just, save it. And I mean, I still use this just so I can, be aware of, what is even going on. Because it's easy to get confused if there's, 12 or 13 different terms just for shipping and different types of shipping and stuff like that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to go download this sheet in the description. It's an Excel sheet, and I'll see you guys in the next video.